For the last 5 years, there's been a website called Ghetto Gaggers that has been up on the internet. It's a pornographic website where white racists are depicted abusing and beating up black women as they're having sex with them. They call these women the N word, they call them B's, they call them H's, they slap them, they make them eat watermelon. Sometimes they even make them sit in their own urine or other humiliating acts. It's a very degrading deviant site filled with just utter filth. And you would think in the 5 years that this site has been up, there would be some sort of outrage from um, everybody, all the black people on social media. Unfortunately, there's been nothing but silence. Um, I mean, I've heard maybe a couple of videos from guys like Rick Scorpio and even Tommy Sotomayor. They've talked about it when it first came out, and you would think that something would have been done in that time, but nothing has been done. There has been no campaign to get this site shut down. Even I'm surprised with the silence. Even from mainstream media, you would think with this type of site, with white men running around with Confederate flag T-shirts, black women writing "I like the KKK" on their own bodies and saying that they are N-words and they're proud to be N-words, and you would think there would be some sort of action being taken to shut this site down. But unfortunately, this site has run for 5 years, all while your pro-blacks, your pro-black back to Africa Negroes have said nothing. I mean, there's been a contingent of them all over YouTube and all over social media. Yet these guys who are supposed to be the protectors of black women and supposedly believe that black women are goddesses and queens have not made a single effort, to take this website down or to campaign against this website. And there's been utter silence from your NAACP, your Al Sharpton, your Louis Farrakhan, your black fraternities and sororities. Not a single word from any of these people, not even from Oprah Winfrey, not even from feminists, white feminists who are supposed to be the protectors of womanhood. Not a single word. Utter and complete silence from all of these people in the face of this Ghetto Gaggers website. And this site has gone on for 5 straight years, depicting these racist and degrading images of black women, and not a peep heard from anyone. I, as a publisher and a guy who understands the business of First Amendment and understands how the First Amendment works, this site could easily be shut down, in two ways. And I'm going to go in depth explaining those two ways in this video. The first way this site could be shut down is through the First Amendment, which is because the site will be. Collect my thoughts. But the first way this site can be shut down is through obscenity laws, and obscenity laws are based on community standards. When we look at the Ghetto Gaggers website, it does not meet any community standard for pornography. The depictions of racism clearly establish a standard of promoting hate and hate speech. The use of the N-word, the slapping, the abusing of these women, that that's obscene, and the sexual violence depicted is obscene. Again, pornography is like it skirts the First Amendment in that it's depicting sex, but the violence in Ghetto Gaggers is what makes it obscene, and the use of the N-word and the racist depictions and the sexual violence is what makes it obscene. So any First Amendment lawyer could argue that state and have the site shut down because, again, it clearly meets the obscenity laws. Because community standards would say that this site clearly is obscene. I mean, even by pornography standards, in pornography, there's all sorts of stuff going on, from S&M to scat to all sorts of crazy stuff. But what makes this site obscene by community standards is the promotion of racism and the promotion of sexual violence. Those two standards right there um, meet the constitutional standard for community standards. It's just like yelling fire in a crowded theater. You have a right to say things in a theater, but you don't have a right to say fire in a crowded theater. This site pretty much violates community standards. Now, this is the same standard, that was held up back in the 60s and the 70s when guys like Larry Flint were starting Hustler. There was a certain line that he couldn't cross. And guys like Bob Guccione, when they created Penthouse, there was this line that he couldn't cross, they couldn't cross. when they were producing their pornographic materials. But Ghetto Gaggers clearly crosses that line. And, you would think that your NAACPs, your Al Sharptons, your Louis Farrakhan's, and even your pro-black Afrocentrics here on YouTube and in Facebook, they would have, mounted a charge based on that one argument right there of community standards. Because in the World Wide Web, you would think that this site does not meet any standard, for fostering a good World Wide Web community. It really promotes hate and hatred of black women and hatred of black people. And the depictions of sexual violence are something that nobody wants to promote, you know, if you want to have a good moral society, because again, that's also all based in community standards. And community standards are a big part of First Amendment law. And publishers like myself had to adhere to those community standards. Even guys like Howard Stern have to adhere to community standards. There's even a line that even he won't cross. And I doubt he would have anything to do with this site, and I doubt anybody else would have anything to do with this site. Um, but, I look at black people and their silence on this matter, and it speaks volumes. It says that, black people, really, black lives don't matter to black people, because you would look at this site, you would say, you would be making every effort to get this site shut down and get it off the web, because this site, it should not have been running in the first year, let alone 5 years. The whole thing should have been shut down immediately. But, black folks, when it comes down to protecting other black folks, they show in. I mean, well, not really protecting them, but let me think about what I was gonna say. When it comes down to black folks taking on white folks and white races, they turn into cowards. And when it comes down, it's when I look at this, I look at all these pro-blacks who come out when another black person says something. They've got 4-hour radio shows, they've got 2-hour videos, they're ranting, they're raving when a black person says something about another black person. But here, this site it's remained in production for 5 straight years, and not a word said by your pro-black contingent, not a word said by your black intellectuals, not a word said by your black politicians, not a word said by your black celebrities. And I thought all these people, they would come out and campaign full force to get this website shut down. But again, silence. And they don't even, and the law is right there on their side, to get this site shut down. I mean, community standards would say that this site is obscene. It's just as obscene as when Justin Timberlake ripped off Janet Jackson's part of Janet Jackson's costume at the Super Bowl. That was considered obscene, and this site would be considered obscene because it meets the same community standard. Because it crosses a line that anybody, because the community standard is like this. Any reasonable, rational thinking person would say, this is not something that would be considered um, meeting the standard of the community. It would not be something that they would think is, appropriate. And when they look at the World Wide Web, even if you're a person who's watched some porn, you would like a MILF hunter, or something like that, you would say that this is obscene, because of the violence and the racist content in it. That's what would make it obscene, and that would be what would make it obscene, but under the First Amendment standard. And you would think that Negroes who were supposed to be so well educated, these college educated Ivy League type Negroes, they would have jumped on this and argued this case in court. But they didn't do that. They just let this site fester for 5 straight years. Did nothing. I mean, again, here's a chance to take on the racists that everybody supposedly hates, but nothing is done. The second standard that could be used to shut down the Ghetto Gaggers website is actually lower than the community standard website. I mean, not, excuse me what I'm saying. The second standard that could be used to shut down the Ghetto Gaggers website is actually lower than the legal standard of community standards. This standard, is, as David Carroll talked about it about in another one of his classic videos, is just going to the web hosts and petitioning them and letting them know that you plan on boycotting all the websites on their website on that server until they remove this one. I mean, that all that requires is a basic email letter writing campaign to a web host such as your GoDaddy, .com or something like, or one of these other web host servers, finding out who they are and letting them know, look, as long as you've got this website up here, we're going to boycott all your other websites, and we're going to tell everybody, that this website is up here. This website is obscene. This website depicts racist depictions of black women being degraded. It depicts sexual violence against black women. And as this site is up here, you know what? We're gonna boycott all the other sites that are hosted on these servers until you remove this one. This is a very simple standard. I mean, and then take action, to let everybody, all the other businesses that are hosted on that website know that this, like your GoDaddy, know that you're going to boycott all their businesses because there's a lot of retail and other online businesses on this server, on these servers, and they don't want to lose their business. They don't want to lose their foot traffic, and they're going to start putting pressure on these ghetto gaggers, and they're going to have, and eventually the web host is going to pull the site from their server. What they're going to say is, look, this site can't be here. You're going to have to take this elsewhere. You're costing me business. And this standard right here is one that could have a quick impact because if enough people wrote those letters and enough people got together, and if you had a national, media campaign along with this, it would have an impact. But again, the Negro, as lazy as he is, and she is, you know, they don't want to take that type of action because again, Negro is a coward, and taking action against white people is something they don't want to do. They don't want to offend, their white masters, so they don't want to go after this Ghetto Gaggers website that has been up for 5 straight years. You have black women calling themselves N-words. You have the black women calling themselves the B word. You have black women being slapped and depicted eating watermelon and called and just degraded and abused. But this is okay with both black men and black women. It's not okay with me. Now, I wanted to write a blog. I wrote a blog about it last week, and they got a big response. And this is the reason why I'm making the video, because I expected, other black people to come in and take action on this. I thought they were going to take action on this way back in 2010, but I see, black folks being black folks. Black lives only matter again, only when they're being murdered by a white cop or a non-black person. They're not valued by other black people. And in this case, nobody wants to take on this website, And as a publisher and a guy who understands the First Amendment, I decided, I would make a video to say, this is what we all can do. I plan on writing a letter to the web host. I plan on, letting more people know what they can do to get this site shut down, because every effort needs to be made to shut this down. This is not good content for the World Wide Web. This is the kind of content that people use when they want to talk about obscenity and censoring other people. I mean, I want to keep the World Wide Web open. I want to keep it free, and this does not keep things free. This is a clear violation of obscenity laws. And when you have people making obscene, super obscene content, it makes it harder for other content producers, and it makes it harder for other people who want to create content under the First Amendment, because you have a right to free speech, but then you have a responsibility to create content. When you apply your free speech, you have the responsibility to look out for the community and make sure that everything fits within a community standard. And this Ghetto Gaggers website clearly does not meet any community standard. I mean, if you put this site up there and you had Asian women being slapped and calling ching chongs, the Asian community would have it shut down in 5 seconds. If you had this same site up there and and these white men were beating up on Hispanic women and calling them, whatever names that they call Spanish women, putas and something like that, that the site would be shut down. If they had this site up there with Arab women and they were, calling them ragheads and doing stuff like that, that site would be shut down. And it would be shut down so fast our head would spin, because again, these ethnic groups, you know, they have economic power and they flex their economic power and they let themselves be known when people create content to degrade them. And this is what black people also have to start doing. They have to start saying, we're going to flex our economic power and shut down content. Excuse me, I just saw something. shut down content that is meant to degrade us. We have to speak out against content that degrades us. I mean, again, there would be no ghetto gaggers beating up on Asian women, beating up on Hispanic women, or beating up on Arab women. It just would not be done, because those groups have economic power and they have tremendous influence and political power that they would talk about community standards, and that would get it shut down. And then they also have economic power. They would go to these web hosts and let them know, we're gonna let everybody on your server know that you are hosting this website, and we're gonna have this site. And if you don't take this site off, we're taking our business elsewhere. And that would be the end of it. But Negro, he just refuses to flex his muscles. He refuses to speak out on issues that are important. No, most of these Negroes here on social media would rather make idiotic garbage content like twerk videos or go back and forth with each other rather than unite to deal with this Ghetto Gaggers website and how destructive it is. Because if you say you love black women, you would not just give this site a pass. You would be speaking out against it and you would be protesting it, because you would understand that, again, as your woman goes, so your race goes. That's what many black people say. So if your woman is being degraded, called an N word, slapped, made to eat watermelon, or forced to sit in her own filth, is this the direction you want your race to go into? Is this the way you want your kids to? Is this the culture you want transmitted to your children, that being abused is perfectly fine? Is this the way you want your black women to be seen by the world? I mean, it's sad that Monsters Ball established this standard and nobody spoke out then, and that it has escalated to this Ghetto Gaggers. And sadly, the silence, says that this is okay with many black men and many black women. And I look at it and I'm saying it's not okay with me as a man who believes in the First Amendment and also believes in community standards. I don't want this to be the standard for black people. And, you know, it's up to, rational black thinking black people to put that line in the sand and say, this is unacceptable, this does not meet community standards, and this is what we deem as obscene. And we have to go out, and say that this is a violation of the obscenity laws of the United States of America. And as long as you have this up here violating the obscenity laws, we're going to go to your web host and let them know, look, we're not going to buy anything on your site, or the sites hosted on your server. And until you remove this site, they're not going to see any business. But again, your Negro is very cowardly. This is why we haven't had Al Sharpton, mount this type of offense. We haven't had your Jesse Jackson mount this type of offense. We haven't had your Louis Farrakhan or your black fraternities and black sororities, mount this offense against this Ghetto Gaggers website. Because again, this site could have been shut down way back ago, 5 years ago. I mean, a couple of reports on NBC Nightly News or Nightline or any of these other shows, and this site would have been gone like that, and that would have been the end of it. But most of your Negroes are too busy arguing and fussing with each other over what some celebrity said, or talking about some other foolishness, to take those two actions that I just depicted, talking about community standards and or writing a web host, to get this site shut down. Now, this has been done in the past to other websites, that have had inappropriate content or disgusting content. And even the FCC has even stepped in, even on events, things like the Super Bowl, after Justin Timberlake, ripped off that outfit, part of Janet Jackson's outfit. That was deemed obscene. Again, violated community standards. Many people got offended when they saw that on their television screens. They're watching, because the Super Bowl was a family event, and people were watching this, and they saw that indecent exposure is obscene, and it led to, at the time, Anthony Powell, or I think that's what his name was, head of the FCC, he cracked down on content because it was a clear line in the sand that had been crossed. The community, people, those hundreds of millions of people who watched the Super Bowl, they were offended when they saw this, and I believe most people, if they knew about this Ghetto Gaggers website, they would be offended as well. Not just black people, but white people as well, and foreign people all over the world. I think they would all be offended because, again, the content depicted in this site clearly violates community standards, and any community would not want the promotion of people using the N word, people abusing women, or humiliating women, or making them sit in filth, because all of this stuff is stuff that content people would find completely and utterly offensive. And people, ordinary people who have community in the community would find this content completely and utterly offensive, and they would pretty much make every effort to get this site shut down, and make sure that it would never be seen again, because they don't want these values promoted to children, they don't want these values promoted to adults, and they don't want these ideas promoted to adults, because the whole idea of promoting racism and sexual violence, that goes beyond pornography. I mean, pornography is just a depiction of sex, but this is a depiction of sex and violence, and that is what would make it obscene. But and this is what the web host would be told. This is obscene material. I mean, even the federal government would come in and say this is obscene material. It violates the First Amendment, and they would probably have it shut down. But your Negro, he's not. He's too scared to take that action. This is again a site something that could be easily done. The two solutions are just right there, and I've outlined both of them. And I'm hoping more black people get up and start taking some action, because one person alone writing one letter is not enough. But if we get 1 million or 2 million people on this Ghetto Gagger site can be put out of business within maybe a week or so. I mean, if Negroes went at this Ghetto Gaggers the way they went after Michael Brown, the way they went after Eric Garner, the way they went after Trayvon Martin, they could have an impact. They could make a difference. I mean, instead of them marching and protesting, if we get 1 million people to write letters to this web host, we get 1 million people, to even write the FCC. That's the end of this Ghetto Gaggers website. But but that's me. I just came up with a solution. As a guy who knows First Amendment, as a publisher, and a guy who understands, the business of social media and web transactions and stuff like that, and web-based businesses. I understand what I can produce, and I understand what I can't produce, and I understand as a publisher, there's a fine line between good taste and just trash and hate speech, and this, clearly isn't a line of it goes beyond any line. It's just pure hate, and it's sadly is something that we could have done something about as black people. But I just keep waiting, for the Negro to start taking a look at themselves and saying it's time to take action. Because you can do a 4-hour blog talk radio show talking about what somebody said in a YouTube video, then you could take the time, to let those same listeners know we have a plan to take down this Ghetto Gaggers website. I mean, this is something everyone on black social media should have gotten together and worked on 5 years ago. And the sad part is nothing has gotten done. And I thought that they were more popular people who would have made these videos and come up with this solution. I mean, more educated people than I am, people with bigger followings than I have, within this YouTube social circle. I thought they would have come out and worked on this solution, but sadly, nothing is done. I guess I have to mount the campaign, and I'm hoping it doesn't fall on deaf ears like my group economics challenge. I'm hoping people, get together and really make the effort to do something about this site, because we have to take control of our image if we want to make it, if we want people to see us in a different light. And the continuing silence on this Ghetto Gaggers says that black people are complicit in the degradation of black women. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe.